Ross Ulbricht stood in a public library, his laptop screen glowing with the Silk Road's first illegal transaction. $1 billion in black market goods flowed through this single, flickering interface. By linking a pseudonymous user to a digital shadow economy, he turned an experimental currency into an untraceable weapon of commerce. But as the FBI decrypted his final fatal mistake, the entire empire began to crumble from the inside out. Irony of the decade, and it involves a catastrophic lapse in judgment that brought the whole house of cards crashing down. So sit back, grab a cup of water, and let's get to it. The story begins in early 2011 with a guy who went by the name of Dread Pirate Roberts. He wasn't a seafaring rogue, but a computer programmer with a vision of a marketplace free from government interference. He launched a website on the Tor network called Silk Road. At the time, Bitcoin was essentially a playground for hobbyists and crypto anarchists. Its value was barely hovering around $1. Silk Road changed that calculation overnight. It gave Bitcoin a real world use case. Think about that. Before Silk Road, Bitcoin was just digital dust. After Silk Road, it was a currency that could buy anything provided you knew where to look. You see, the beauty of the system was anonymity. By routing internet traffic through a series of encrypted nodes, the Tor network hid the location of both the buyer and the seller. Combined with Bitcoin, which operated outside the purview of traditional banks, Silk Road created a closed-loop economy. Users weren't just buying illegal items. They were participating in a live experiment of decentralized finance. Between 2011 and 2013, the site facilitated sales of roughly $1.2 billion in illegal goods. Drugs, fake identification, computer hacking tools. It was all there, just a few clicks away. But here's the easy win, or what we might call the first pillar of the platform's success: trust. In a world of digital anonymity, how do you trust a stranger not to rob you? The Dread Pirate Roberts implemented a sophisticated rating system. Vendors had to maintain high scores or risk being kicked off the platform. It was basically the Amazon of the underworld. Buyers could browse reviews, check the quality of product, and hold funds in an escrow service until the package arrived. This level of professionalism gave users a sense of security they'd never had before. It made the black market feel safe. That trust, strange as it sounds, was the fuel that turned a basement project into a global phenomenon. Now let's move to the second pillar, the level up. The scale of this operation was hidden in plain sight, but authorities were finally catching on. Law enforcement agencies like the FBI and the Drug Enforcement Administration had to learn an entirely new vocabulary to chase these ghosts. They weren't tracking bank accounts, they were tracking digital wallets. In 2012, a specialized task force was assembled specifically to map the transaction patterns of the Silk Road. They realized that while Bitcoin transactions are anonymous in terms of names, they are permanent and transparent on the blockchain. Every single move of money was recorded for eternity. The investigators started playing a long, patient game. They didn't need to break the encryption of the site. They just needed to find the one human error that tied a physical person to the digital handle. It's a classic case of operational security failure. The Dread Pirate Roberts was a genius at coding, but he was human. And humans make mistakes. For instance, researchers found that he had accidentally posted a question on a tech support forum years earlier using his real name, and that post linked back to the same email address he used to set up the infrastructure for the Silk Road. That, combined with a customs agent discovering a package of fake identity documents destined for a suspiciously familiar address, cracked the case wide open. By October of 2013, the FBI was ready to move. They tracked him to a public library in San Francisco. He was sitting at his laptop, logged in as the site administrator. The game was over. If you're finding this story of digital cat and mouse helpful, hit subscribe. I drop videos like this every week that pull back the curtain on the world's most interesting events. If this is clicking for you, a quick subscribe helps me keep digging into these histories. Stick around, because the final piece of the puzzle is actually the most surprising part of the whole saga. All right. Remember how I said the best part was saved for last? Here it is. The story of Silk Road doesn't end with a prison sentence. It ends with a massive, unintended consequence for Bitcoin itself. You see, the government didn't just shut down the site. They seized the servers, and in doing so, they seized the digital wallets. At the time, the FBI grabbed roughly 144,000 Bitcoins. Back then, people thought it was just a pile of digital evidence. They auctioned off a portion of those coins in 2014, with investors like Tim Draper buying them for around $300 each. Think about that math. If the government had held on to every single one of those coins, that stash would be worth billions of dollars today. But it gets weirder. The federal government became one of the largest holders of Bitcoin on the planet. They accidentally became the biggest marketing engine for crypto legitimacy. Every time they seized a wallet from a dark web bust, it made the news. It proved that Bitcoin was real, that it had value, and that it could be traced by the authorities. The Silk Road essentially proved the utility of Bitcoin while simultaneously forcing the regulatory frameworks that we see today. It taught the world that the blockchain is a public ledger. You can hide your name, but you cannot hide your history. That simple realization shifted the entire narrative from Bitcoin is for criminals to Bitcoin is an asset that can be audited. It's a paradox. The most illegal site on the web might have been the single most important catalyst for Bitcoin becoming the regulated institutional asset it is right now. Let that sink in for a second. The very thing the authorities tried to destroy, they helped immortalize by proving its permanent public architecture. It changed the way the world views digital value. And once you see it this way, you can't unsee it. Silk Road wasn't just a marketplace. It was a stress test that Bitcoin passed with flying colors, even if the man behind the curtain lost everything. So there you go. The rise and fall of the internet's most infamous marketplace, and how the aftermath transformed a fringe digital experiment into a global powerhouse. If you got value from this, share it with someone who needs to hear the truth about early crypto history, and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive into the stories behind the headlines. I've got something coming up next week about the collapse of the early exchanges that is going to make this look like a small time operation. Keep your eyes peeled, and thanks for watching.